One of the things that's been dropped in your lap early is you've been asked to conduct an investigation of the pardons issued by former Governor Matt Bevin. Can you give us an update on what that process is going to be and where that process stands and how you feel about that?
Well, we put a statement out a couple of days ago talking about our view that the pardon power has been around for a while, but it needs to be used judiciously and after great deliberation. And I stand with the Commonwealth and county attorneys that have expressed a great concern over some of the pardons that have been made. We're still getting our feet underneath us here in the office, and so I have no additional comment on what that looks like. But I think Kentuckians expect for that pardon power to be used judiciously, and certainly stand with our Commonwealth and county attorneys.
Okay, thank you. Another thing that's been dropped in your lap first few days on the job is the question of Governor Beshear. I know you two have worked together and you obviously have a very strong, positive professional relationship, which I know a lot of Kentuckians are glad to see. Maybe we won't spend as much money suing between the Attorney General and the Governor's office now. But as AG, do you see yourself working independently of the Governor's office, with the Governor's office? And the reason I ask the question, I understand there's a lot of people who are very smart, much smarter than me in the state, that are concerned that Governor Beshear's first act of replacing the Board of Education was unconstitutional or at least illegal. Comments, thoughts, questions on that?
Well, let me talk about it from the 30,000-foot level. On the campaign trail, I talked a lot about this job is really independent of who is in the governor's mansion. We have a responsibility to be outward-facing,
okay,
to confront the drug epidemic, to help in any way that we possibly can improve the public safety outcomes for all Kentuckians. On a more micro level, in terms of the interaction or engagement between the Attorney General's office and other statewide elective offices, I think we have a responsibility to be constructive partners, to collaborate when we can, and to be constructive in other ways as well. So there will be a whole host of considerations and issues that we have to look at here in the coming days, and seeing what our responsibility is as it relates to those. My approach is to be very cautious about speaking in advance of any decisions that have been made by this office, and so I'll hold out on making any comments on any specific decisions that have been made by the governor until we've made our own internal judgments here in this office. But again, the Office of Attorney General should be outward facing, should be doing everything we possibly can to help the men, women, and children of all 120 counties. That is what the responsibility is. That's when I think people elected me. They elected me with the idea that I would focus on not just Franklin County, but the surrounding 119 counties, and we are endeavoring to do that. I was just over in Lexington yesterday meeting with some of my federal counterparts to talk about how we can better share intel, how we can better collaborate with one another to work on the public safety issues that we have here in the Commonwealth. So I look forward to, on a whole host of topics, being a constructive partner with our other statewide elected officers.
That would include the state legislature, obviously, and just a few weeks from now, the legislature is coming into session.
Sir.
What are your goals as Attorney General, or what are your priorities that you would like to see come to fruition in the state legislature?
Well, I think for us, the first thing is to see if we can get any more money. We, law enforcement and the safety issues and public safety issues that we have here, Kentucky, require that we have resources, and we have some resources now in the AG's office, and we'll look for ways to be innovative and creative as it relates to bolstering our efforts here in the AG's office. But I'd like to do everything I possibly can to impress upon the legislature how incredibly important it is for them to provide us a few more dollars if they can. It would help with our special prosecutions unit, making sure that we have more prosecutors out in the field to help our Commonwealths and county attorneys. I'm sure that the Commonwealths and county attorneys and those respective state senators and representatives districts would appreciate that. I think it would help if we had more money in the Department of Criminal Investigations to help with the investigations that are run by our local municipalities and counties. So that is a starting point for us in terms of what we'd like to see from the legislature. I obviously recognize that the budget here is tight because of other competing issues, and so we're going to look again for creative ways that this office can bring in more dollars along the way as well.
You talked about public safety, and that seems to be a recurring theme in our conversation this morning. And one of the things you mentioned was the elderly. And particularly in eastern Kentucky, but also in the big cities throughout Kentucky, we're finding a lot of the elderly raising children or grandchildren because of the opioid crisis you mentioned earlier.
Yes, sir.
But they're also being scammed at ever increasing rates. And there's been a real problem, particularly among people in the rural areas, with recent scams that have been hitting. What will your office do to step up public security and public safety in those areas?
Well, one of the first things we did is bring in LaDonna Coble, who's be running our senior protection unit. She's got a heart for these issues, and so she's going to be out in the field giving presentations, talking about ways to avoid these scams. It's also important in my judgment that not only do we have conversations with senior citizens, but by and large they are connected to family units. So talking to the sons and daughters and talking to neighbors to make sure that they are looking out for signs of someone that might be trying to take advantage of our senior citizens here in Kentucky. Making sure that we're establishing good relationships with financial advisors. Financial advisors and banks, bank institutions are sometimes some of the first people, first individuals that recognize that there's something awry or something's amiss as it relates to a particular senior citizen's account. And so making sure that, that we have a strong collaborative approach to making sure that our senior citizens aren't defrauded. That's something that's near and dear to my heart as I see my grandparents aging and I see my mother aging as well. Making sure that we're doing everything we can for this population is something that is a great responsibility of the Attorney